2 years ago, which created a lot of demand on digital payments again for the banking industry and other payment companies to provide with. Thirdly, COVID. I think COVID has been a great leveler for everything, and that's what has given rise to digital payments in the industry. Now, coming back, I think what are the difficulties? I think I would primarily put the difficulties in three key areas which are there. The first one is primarily legacy. I think banks have been in existence for years. In case of Standard Chartered, we are there for almost 160 plus years in the country. And there have been banks with various levels and various start points on digitization. So the earlier you started, you carried a lot of legacy systems with you. So in the late 60s, early 70s, having a mainframe was a fat thing. So, it was something which many banks invested in. We also invested in mainframes in certain areas. Now, one of the biggest problem is that, there are a lot of legacy systems which need to be interfaced. That's the first challenge or difficulty which is there in terms of digitization for the banks. Second is process. Processes in the banks are well laid down, but these processes kind to fit around the current systems which are there, the current situations and the approaches in which the banks are working, it is there. So that is something which is there. Third is, I think, because of legacy technology and processes, it tends to slows down the whole activity of digitization, and there is a cost barrier. So if I have to interface a current database system or a current solution which provides an API connectivity, it's much cheaper and faster for it to be done than if I have to connect to, say, old Linux box or a mainframe based system. So these are the ones which are kind of barriers which are there in the industry. The next is people. It's a combination of people with a fair amount of process knowledge and the right amount of digital knowledge and thought process which is needed to kind of bring all of these together, and that is something which is very important. You cannot tilt on either side. So if you have too many people who are based on process but don't understand digitization, there is a challenge. If there's too many people who are doing everything digital but don't follow the process which is needed for it to be done, is also a challenge which is there. So I think it's important to have a diverse team which runs the whole digitization agenda for the organization or the bank, as it might be, and that helps really grow. The other challenge, I wouldn't say difficulty, is stakeholder management. I think when you do any digitization activity, it covers a whole lot of processes, a whole lot of process owners, a whole lot of people who are there. So to take all of them together and work together in a collaborative way, it needs a lot of communication and management of the stakeholders. So that's something which is very important. And I think the one thing that I've learned through my career is that I think you need to communicate. I think it's important that you communicate at all levels, doesn't matter, at the right time with the right messages, whether good or bad. I think that's something which always paves the way for you into a successful execution of any task that you're doing. Other difficulties, I think, is that today when people try to implement any technology system, not only digitization, they want to fit it the way they are doing the current process. So if you are turning an on-off volume this way, and if you give somebody to a plus minus, he will always say, no, I want to turn it off in a manual way rather than having a plus minus. Hence, if you see in many times these days in many digital systems, even though the backend volume turn off is a knob which appears, is actually digital. The knob is a digital, it's not an analog knob, but that's to retrofit something to meet the current process or the current expectation from the users which is there. So I think that flexibility in mindset should be available with everybody for it to happen, where they don't want to fit an existing process which might be an incorrect practice to retrofit into a new digital world. So that's something very, very important. The other is, I think everybody, there are many players in a digitization process. So everybody wants to prioritize their task. I think prioritization is fairly important over here again. What tasks you want to take important, which is the most valuable proposition that you want to bring. There's a word we commonly use in our context called MVP, which is the most valuable proposition that we can deliver, and leave aside everything. What is the MVP that you can deliver to deliver a product or a digitization agenda? Finally, I think the important thing is that one needs to put the client at the forefront of the whole situation. He should be at the nucleus, and one can then decide how one wants to take over the digital agenda. So I think primarily to summarize, I think people, process, technology, these are the three main challenges in digitization. Not difficult, manageable, and in the past have been proven to be delivered successfully with everybody. So that's important here.
Yes, sir. So there was a lot of things which were really eye-opening, like how stakeholders come into play, how people's thought processes include in this. So that was a real beautiful answer. So shall we move on to the next question, sir?
Yes, yes, please. Yeah.
So are the rapidly growing mobile payment platforms a threat to digital banking sector? If yes, then how do banks plan to compete against
Okay. That's a good thought and a good question. I think my point would be, rather than it being a threat, it's an opportunity. And I think the new platforms, mobile platforms or fintech partners or whatever to call it, they are opportunities for banks to learn and grow from them, and that's important. I'll give you some examples.
them?
So we had a major change in the taxi industry across India a few years ago when Ola, Uber started becoming very, very popular in the country. In fact, they're still very popular.
Mm.
But then, it there was a break point at certain point where the local taxi, drivers, or in Mumbai, what we call the Kali Pili taxi, the black and yellow
Yeah.
taxis, they kind of felt threatened by them. uh, I think that there were some revolts, there were some strikes, people objected, everything happened. But eventually, if you see what has happened today, is that what Ola Uber tried to address as a problem statement, even the local taxis have kind of adhered to it. So one of the problem statement was going short distances. It is in early good old days, it was impossible to get a taxi for a minimum fare and a short distance in Mumbai, where I live.
Mm.
But nowadays, you find not a single driver refusing it. He's more than happy to take it. Second is maybe the politeness at which the driver talks. In Ola, Uber, that's a very important factor, and you suddenly find the local driver also behaving in that manner now because he's
Yeah.
losing business. So he thinks that's something very important. A third thing is digital payments. The driver always knew cash, but nowadays you'll find taxis with stickers of Google Pay or Phone Pay on the taxis. So that's an example which is there, which kind of when new players comes in, it kind of creates a lot of precipitation in the market, and that energy is utilized by all the players to reinvent and reassign themselves. And other similar examples, like if you go to see the local kirana stores competing with, say, players like Big Basket or other e-commerce grocery companies, or take an example of an offline appliance store versus an online purchase of appliance to an e-commerce website, or a medical store for that instance. One had never heard of getting discounts on medicine from a retail shop. You would not even get a paise reduced. Today you can stand at a medical shop and ask him what discount you're offering, but that's driven by the electronic medium, e-commerce and medicine, which has come into play, which is kind of change the gap for the direction for the shop owners. Now, when you see from a banking industry perspective, why does and when I say this, it's not that the banking industry has to be complacent. I think you have to be on your feet always, no matter what industry you are into. But I think, why does one work with a bank, and why is a bank plays an important role? I think two things a bank does for you. One is it moves your money. So you either
Mm.
pay your money to somebody or receive your money from somebody. Second thing it does is it stores your money for you. So both things are embedded in a very big trust situation. If you don't trust a bank, you will never ask them to move your money or store your money. That's something
Yeah.
which you'll never do. So it's like a doctor. If you don't trust him or her, you will never go for treatment. So the bank also is in a very similar situation, which is there today. Luckily, as a regulation privilege and as the way it is working today, the banks are quite empowered today by the regulator to store and move your money in the way they want, and that kind of helps you with the trust being generated for it. Second is, I think there is, from a banking perspective, there are effective ways in which the bank manages the backends. I think that's very, very important. So the bank has got these kind of niche strengths which are available, which helps you to compete with the fintechs. Third is, I think, ability to do stuff like anti-money laundering prevention, fraud monitoring, capital adequacy, regulation management, the guidelines. So those are the robust trust and regulation platforms on which the banks run. Now, having said all of these, I'm not saying that the fintechs can't exist. I think it's an ecosystem. It's a partnership which needs to work for benefit of everybody in the industry. And I think coming to your second part of the question, that how can banks compete with this? I think I rather wouldn't say compete as the right word. I think, as I said, it's an ecosystem that the banks need to work with. I think one of the things the banks can definitely do to compete is that they have to try and work like a fintech. I think they have to be agile. They have to increase their client focus. They have to increase the offers available, increase the features available in their products which are available. One of the things that most of the fintech platforms offer you is minimalization, or minimalistic as they call. So if you see today, we've had a digital, maybe I digress a bit, but into a online broking situation. We've had companies which give you online broking capability for last almost 10, 15 years. But then suddenly you'll find that there are new incumbents who have come in, more like startups, who offer you a very minimal platform doing the same thing at a much cheaper cost. And the earlier platforms were very, very heavy and similar to banks, online banking, mobile solution. They were very heavy, feature rich, providing you every possible capability. But to find that feature which you want to use, you always used to struggle.
Hmm.
Now, the approach has always been to give things which are minimalistic as a UI, UX, which people can utilize. And to give you one example, I think which will be more relative to everybody. In the good old days, if somebody wanted to transfer money to somebody outside India, what we call an online remittance on OTT, online telegraphic transfer in the banking language, it's called, or some parent wanted to send money to his or her child studying outside India. It was a struggle. One had to go to the bank, collect some half a dozen forms, fill up all the forms, give it to the guy. He will scrutinize the form and tell you five things. And then maybe after a week, if you're lucky, the money will reach. Now that something was a struggle, obviously, but then with the banking regulator, with the banks all coming together, we've got a few banks are now offering online remittance platforms, where for key payment types, one can just at a click of few buttons do an online payment transaction, which reaches to the destination outside India in almost the same day or the next day. And that's something which is very, very important, which is happening. The second point on competition, I think one of the struggles which we had with the fintechs on the payment side was, especially in the wallet side, digital wallets, which had become popular, their portability was a problem. You could, if you are on a certain X wallet, you can't make payment to somebody who's on a Y wallet. That portability was a challenge. Now, to overcome the challenge, a new product which was launched in the industry about 5-6 years back, called UPI. UPI is an amazing product, amazing technology which has been launched in India. And from a UPI perspective, the beauty is you can send money from bank A to B, or receive money from bank B to A. You can even pull the money out. You can utilize your digital handle, which is similar to your email address, or a phone number which can be used. And guess what? You need not even use an application of the bank you are banking with. You can use a third-party application to do the whole transaction. And the simplicity and the beauty of that app has given phenomenal numbers in the industry today. Today in India, as per, I think if I'm not mistaken, last month, India has done about 2.8 billion UPI transactions. That's a phenomenal number. If you see that number in just before COVID last year, it was about maybe 1.2 billion or something. There is a jump of 125% transaction volume in UPI. So these are some things where the banks have coped up. They still need to keep on catching up, still need to work better, and the services will improve. Few areas where I think banks can really do better is, my guess is, one is maybe the KYC process, though it's mandated, I think it can still be made simpler, which is there. So the know your customer process, which is there. Second is maybe, if you look at, say, a stuff like while the banking is a service industry, but still there are kind of commodities the bank gives to the customer, which is a touch point. Example, a checkbook delivery or a credit card delivery. Now, the customer expects today to be tracked like a order that you make either on one of the e-commerce platforms. I think the banks can do much better in that. Uh, Third is, I think, offers and products which banks is offering to their customers today. There's a lot of automation, AI involved in that. I still think there is still an opportunity to do much, much better, because there is still an opportunity for banks to sell the right product to the right person. I think that gap still needs to be caught up a bit. Uh, Finally, I think availability. I think today, and this is something the banks have caught up, I would say so. So today, a banking availability is 24 by 7. Other than a branch, again, in few banks cases, like a Standard Chartered, also there are some branches which still run 24 by 7. But otherwise, you can open an account 24 by 7. You can make payment 24 by 7. So your RTGS, which is your high value real time gross settlement system, allows you to make payment 24 by 7. Your fast payments like UPI, IMPS works 24 by 7. Your IMPX works 24 by 7. So you are kind of enabled by the whole ecosystem to run 24 by 7. That's the beauty of it, where the banking industry is moved into today. Earlier, things were very much fit on saying, oh, my check date is there, the bank holiday. There's nothing called a bank holiday now. At least for me, there's nothing like a bank holiday because technology works 24 by 7, which is there. Uh, and one last point just wanted to add here is that I think on the lending side, I think there is still a lot of catch up that banks can do. I think today, uh, the banks are utilizing a lot of credit situations, credit analytics from the fintech partners which are there. That's something with the banks is benefiting. But I think there is areas like maybe if you were to give some wild thoughts, collection today, if there are defaulters on loans, there are collection agents who have methodology and work with the client to recover the money. Maybe says some amount of AI, NLP, whatever you want to call it, can be applied to it, where it not only does a collection of the loan but also helps. There are people who are actually in debt and kind of help them manage the situation of the debt that they are into. That's one option which is there. uh, Sorry, the other thought maybe what I can think of is that EMI, today every loan has got an EMI is called equated monthly installment. So it means that the installment is fixed and the duration is fixed every month. Now, is there a methodology by which one can build up a mechanism by which this kind of becomes stretched and variable at all points of time, but at the same time ensures the whole loan is managed properly? So these are some opportunities which banks, fintechs can look upon and work together to see how the client can benefit from it.
Yeah, sir. So this responses really makes me think of a brighter future. I still remember waiting for my first debit card to come, waiting weeks, not knowing when would it come. If this solutions are implemented, I think a lot would change and it would be much better place currently.
Yeah, of course, and that is just
Yeah.
happening. So you there are debit cards, there are soft cards which are being
Hmm.
already made available to customers moment
Yeah.
they enroll, so they can start actually utilizing on online shopping, and then the physical card comes which you can use at an offline store.
Yeah. Being born in this age, I don't even know what process OTT used to be. Now it's just click, 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 and then send to the
Yeah.
buyer. Yeah. So great answer, sir. So should we move on to the next question?
Yes, please.
So, sir, the rise of digital banking brings some fresh security concerns. So, what are the measures adopted by banks to increase cyber security? And what would you advise the general public to practice to remain safe from such threats?
Okay, I think this is probably the hottest area today in terms of banking, I would say so, primarily because it's becoming digital, becoming online, and as things get more and more online, more and more digital, comes with it the risk associated with it. So it one tends to kind of overlook the risks which are associated with an online transaction, and people tend to get a bit complacent. It's just very natural for somebody to do that versus having a physical cash. So you will be more protective of physical
Hmm.
money which is lying in your wallet or your pocket, than your mobile phone, which probably has almost everything of yours. So one tends to get a bit complacent about it. Now, I think the banks have been two things that is happening. So one is, if I talk generally from a regulation perspective, I think the Reserve Bank of India is quite leading the way in that sense to specify the policies and the guidelines for the banks to follow, especially on cyber security. It's given the right guidance to the banks to follow. We get audited, at a certain frequency. Banks get audited a certain frequency on the cyber security guidelines, whether they follow or don't follow, and they are kind of being cautioned if they don't follow and have to fix that. So that's very, very important. It also has come out with some good circulars and guidelines. So recently, I think a few months back, they've come out with a master circular on digital payments, which kind of very, very specifically in about 150, 150, 125 different areas it touches on cyber security for banking. And that is going to be the right step for the country, because that will make the whole system very, very strong and robust. I think there are various things from an organization perspective which people do, and I will be more generic to it. Standard Chartered also does a lot of things in this, but generally in a few areas, I'm sorry, few areas which I think are important is, one is, I think, running maybe a security ops center, which runs 24/7, looks at all the threats, looks at all the risks, and continuously monitors the whole environment into which you're providing your digital payments, digital banking services which are there. That's important, because that is your an immediate identification of any issues there, and reaction action can be taken to fix those issues which are there if at all something identified. The other is something which we follow a lot, and that's something people have started following, is a secure by design approach. There's something that when you build an application, the coder himself knows the risk associated of a certain type of code he's writing, and has to build it in a manner that is secure by design. So it has to be, so for, I'll give you an example. So say I'm making a solution which is building an API to receive payments from an external party. So whilst I'm receiving it, my job is to receive the payment and pass it to the next guy to process it. But I think I also need to build a design in my code that if the velocity of the payment is very high, or a certain different approach is being followed, I should be able to take a warning alarm saying, oh, there's a problem here. That's a thought process I need to work into as a coder. So that's the follow secure uh, by design approach which is there. The other areas is, anti-malware, which is there, data leakage prevention, which is there. These are the areas which banks have been working on and are still working. Uh, Identity and access management, that's very important. Only on a need to be no basis, rights have to be given to people on systems. If they don't need a certain permission, they should not be given. And it's not only giving at the start, it's managing through the entire life cycle is also very, very important in terms of identity and access. uh, Today banks are networked very, very well. Every branch is connected of banks. Eventually they all connect up to the Reserve Bank or NPCI for the payment systems. And it's important that network security plays a very important role, how the whole security piece in the network is managed. uh, then secure logging and monitoring. I think a lot of logs monitoring needs to be done. That's also very, very important. Vulnerability management, again, that's a area which is very important, how you are managing your vulnerabilities in your environment, how you are controlling that. And I would say one more thing is very important, is simulation and getting ready for a crisis situation. It's like doing the drills. So you have to do, say, a phishing drill in the organization, seeing how much of awareness does the people have on phishing calls or phishing mails coming in. Maybe you can do a cyber crisis event where you can simulate a cyber crisis and see how the organization, the players into it, the management, how they react into it. So these are some of the things which banks have to do, and is very, very important. And I would say, some actions that banks have taken already, even SCB, Standard Chartered, have taken a few of them, which be like enabling multi-factor authentication. That's important. Today a password is something you cannot rely on. So OTP is important, or a hard token, soft token, which gives you the second factor authentication, is important. uh, there are privilege IDs with a lot of rights needed for system maintenance. Those IDs have to be managed properly, because with that high level ID, one can really cause a lot of destruction. So
Yeah.
that's important, how you manage the privilege IDs. uh, you know cryptography, you want to call it, or encryption. So data which is lying at rest in the organization or in the cloud, needs to be encrypted, tokenized, so that even if the data falls in wrong hands, one cannot look at that data and make any knowledge out of it. Even for that matter, your laptops which are there, they need to have disk encryption enabled. So if you lose them, there's no loss of data which is there. Data is kind of there. When you transport data from point A to point B, you encrypt it. So these are some areas which are very, very important, which banks kind of manage and look at in security. Coming back to your second point, what advice should I give? And this is a very, very long list I've got, and I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. One is individually, I would strongly urge each one of you to use a very, very updated hardware. That's very important, which is there, because that's the weakest point in the whole system. Your laptop or your machine PC or your mobile. Again, when you are buying a mobile, please give lot of value to the security features of the mobile. So one is the features. People, if you see the ads on the TV and everywhere, they'll advertise a very good camera, low light photography, X megapixel, stuff like that. But that's important. But I think the security features are very, very important on the mobile, because if the mobile is not secure, then you have a problem. So your mobile, what do you mean by mobile secure? You should look at the history of updates that your manufacturer gives to your mobiles. How frequently does it give updates to your mobile, security updates? If a manufacturer gives a fantastic mobile but has no care for security updates, then you're at a big risk. So please choose providers who give you good security updates on your mobile. There are a few mobile providers who give hardware-based security also on your mobile. So use those kind of providers which are there. Third is software. Now, this is a very underplayed area in the country today. Please buy licensed software. At least at the bare minimum. If you look at your PC, and if you're a Windows user, I'm assuming you're a Windows user, you should have a Windows 10 license on your PC, not Windows 7. Windows 7 is very, very vulnerable these days. No support is available. So you should have a licensed Windows 10, and you should have an antivirus or a internet security product running on your PC. Because two things happens. One is that because you're licensed, you get the most updated security patches from Microsoft. So that keeps your machine secure. And I've seen cases, in not only in the bank but outside, where people have been kind of fleeced of money because they did not have the right software. They were running Windows XP and really, really old kind of software. So that's very important, that whatever cost of the license is worth buying and spending for. Always keep updates on your PC. That's very important, because without the updates, you will never be protected. Click links. I think that's also a big enemy. You suddenly find you click a link on your Android phone and you have some tool running in the background, and that kind of keeps on reading your SMSs. So these are things very important. As far as possible, don't click any links. Be doubly sure what link you are clicking and who's sending it to you. Be careful of phishing calls. People call you, speak to you in a very friendly way and get all the information needed from you out on a call. So we do that. On the banking side, I think there are features available on your mobile or your web app. Most banks do provide in terms of keeping limits on your transactions. So for example, you may have a credit card, which is an international credit card, but you know that you're not going to go out of the country for next 2 years. Then you might as well turn off international transactions on your credit card. So the risk is gone. So whenever international transaction happens, the bank will by default reject it. So there's no question of a card being utilized outside India. And similarly, there are other features available, like setting limits on different type of transactions, on a POS transactions, on an online transaction, on a tap transaction. So please leverage these features available. That kind of is an added layer of protection, which is there available with you. And I think the other last thing says awareness. I think all of you guys are from a fairly modern generation. Technology comes to you intuitive, but there are our people, there are our seniors who come from a different generation for whom technology doesn't come intuitively. So please guide them, help them. I think it is spreading financial literacy and digital literacy and security is responsibility of all of us. So please guide them so that they also know what is happening. And the easiest way for me for it to be done is, I always, people love movies and serials in India. Watch some movies which do this. I give you two names. which I really liked. One is there's this serial called Jamtara on Netflix. That's quite interesting to watch. It gives you a perspective how things are happening, so you can at least be careful. And then there is a Marathi movie which I've seen on Amazon Prime. You can turn on subtitles if you don't know Marathi, but it called Take Care, Good Night. That's also a very nice movie which shows how cyber fraud happens and very simply explained, so people know the risks associated with it. Yeah.
So truly said, we as youngsters are guilty of quite a few of those mistakes. Yeah,
Yeah.
we usually tend to use third-party software, and maybe there we can improve. So, sir, due to some time constraint, we can move to rapid fire session, and if after that we have more time, we can continue with more questions. So, should I start rapid fire?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So, the first question, we would really like to know about the best part of your journey in standard.
I think the best part of my journey is Standard Chartered, and I think it's about 95% of my career. So I think my job is my hobby. So that's the best part of me. So I really am very close to technology as a person, as an individual, and the work I do is like a hobby. It's not like a work which I have to do. So that's the best part of my journey, and I'm blessed, I would say so, for that.
Yeah, yeah, sir, truly. So, next question, how would you define leadership in one word?
One word is difficult, but I think as you mentioned at start, I'm a big cricket fan, and
Yeah,
I think one of the leaders I look up on is MS Dhoni. I think most people will agree that he's been one of the greatest leaders as far as
yeah,
cricketing world goes. I think one of the one of the points he mentioned in somewhere, and I think that's important. I think he said that a sentence is not ever over until you reach a full stop. I
yeah.
think that's very important. I think there's various interpretation of this sentence, this particular term,
Mhm.
but I would say that till the last ball is bowled, you've not lost a match. So you should not give up. That's where I look
Mhm.
at it. And anything you do, you'll have a challenging task, activity in your life, in your career, in your work. Don't give up. I think you still have time, still enough, still reach out. So that's something which I always look at it. Yeah. That's my mantra always.
Yes, sir. So truly inspirational. So from inspiration, I see you have a lot of books behind you. So
Yeah.
what is the last book you have read?
Uh, So I am honestly not a very avid reader in that sense. I read a lot of books on cricket because that's my passion,
Yeah.
which is there. So I don't remember the exact title, but I'm reading a book on by a gentleman called Khalid Ansari, who used to edit a magazine called Sportsweek in my young days. It's a very popular magazine, and he's got a collection of articles of all his Sportsweek articles on cricket into it. So I don't
Hmm.
remember the title, but that's the book
Yeah.
I've just finished reading.
Yes. So you mentioned about involving more AI into our systems, more ML. So I would like to ask, do you think AI will someday take over the world?
Uh, See, this is again a very good question. See, it will not take over the world. I think
Hmm.
eventually what will happen is it will complement human being. So it will
Yeah.
run together. And I'll give you another example which will make my point much easier to understand. So there is these what we call as self-driven cars. So
Hmm.
people always say you will find a world where there'll be no cars, there'll be self-driven. My thought is that you'll have cars which will be smart and connected. So
Hmm.
there'll be still a human who will be driving the car, but a certain percentage, a large percentage of it, the car will be smart and connected to take it over. So, for example, if a person comes in the front, a human has to brake. The car should be able to identify the person and apply the brake.
Hmm.
Or if the front car is slowed down, there are some features already coming in cars these days. But if the front car slows down, your car also should kind of slow down. So it will be a combination of AI and humans, which will run together and make life safer and easier for everybody.
Yes, nowadays we are seeing a great deal of features. Like there is in Tesla parallel park feature, you just press
Yeah.
parallel park, it parallel parks. So,
Yes.
so going to tech, I would like to ask one tech which is underrated.
Okay. Underrated. Okay. So That's a tough question to ask, because I think all tech are important. But I
Yeah.
would say one thing which is in a slightly different way, I would put it as underrated, or I would say underutilized. I think it is the power of sound in movies and cinema, or even in home
Mhm.
theater, in TV viewing. I think most people kind of view movies and view serials and everything on television or in theater just as a visual content. They don't value the sound.
Mhm.
I think if you add sound to it, the effect of a movie or a serial gets double. I think that's something which gets very underrated these days, especially at the speed at which they're producing. They kind of don't focus on that. I think that's very important.
Yes, sir, truly. We really miss like going in cinema and having the sound come from all sides. Now at home,
Yeah,
it's just one speaker coming
yeah,
forward.
yeah.
So also you mentioned you live in Mumbai. When I live in Mumbai, it's a beautiful city. We live in a beautiful country. But if for just imaginary hypothesis, like if you didn't live in India, which country would you want to live
So I think one of the best countries in the world I like is Switzerland. I like it for its just natural beauty which is there. I think that's a country which I would really love to live in.
in?
Just for the sheer beauty of it.
Yes. So one more question. If you would like to have dinner with a billionaire, who would it be?
That's again a interesting question. I think I would be with either a Azim Premji or a Narayan Murthy. I think they are the two pillars who've kind of built this country. Especially for the young population, the technology, and the way India is called the IT hub of the world. I think these two guys are greatly responsible for it.
So truly true. So I see you are very good at teaching. You have taught us so much things over here. So if you are a teacher in school, what is the one subject you would teach?
I would actually go and teach electronics. I think even before computers, my first love is electronics engineering. I think I really love electronics, and I don't mind teaching basic electronics to really young kids, so they can pick up that art
Mhm.
very quickly. I was taught by so in my school we had a subject on electronics in my, I think, class 9 or class 8, I think, and that's where I picked up the skill. So it was really amazing, for me. Of course, it was very bad for
Yeah.
people who didn't like it, but at least for me it was very good. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Even like we just had electronics in our first year. It was great. Really enjoyed the subject. Just miss the physical component since it's online right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But
sir,
these days it is cheap to do things. I One can
yeah.
afford to set up a lab. Just order from
Hmm.
Amazon few kit or some other sites,
Hmm.
and you can do an entire. I think another within about 3,000-4,000 bucks, you can kind of set up a full lab at home to run basic
Hmm.
electronics. That's the way it is these days.
Yes, sir. So I was asking, like, since you have achieved a lot of success, and most people over here would like to know, like, what do you attribute any of the success to luck, and if so, what percentage?
Okay, so I think luck is important. I wouldn't deny that. I think it's hard work plus luck which is there. But I think luck is something which is not in your control. It's a
Mm-hmm.
destiny. It's something that can happen. But I think hard work is in your control. So what's in your control you can do. That's something very important. I wouldn't say any percentage. It depends on the situation where you are into. But I think luck still isn't important, because you have to be in the right place at the right time, or you should grab the right opportunity coming to you uh, at a certain point of time. Many times, you are at crossroads and you have to take a decision. And if luck is your way, you take the right decision and you move forward with it. If
Mm-hmm.
luck is not your way, you might pick up a decision which may not be the optimal decision. So
Yeah.
even in my own personal career, on my life, if I look back, whilst God has been very grace, great to me, very helpful to me, I've got a lot of things which have been very good. But I probably, when I look back, maybe I could have still done better if I would have taken an other decision which I refused to take at that point of time, and I chose this. So it's
Yeah,
it's
truly. Yeah, when we sometimes look at success, we sometimes forget how much failure they had to go through to reach
yeah.
that success. Yes, sir. So I would like to ask like a general fun question. Like, if you had like infinite, like how much money ever it is required to buy any Indian company. So which company would you buy?
I would actually buy the BCCI.
Oh, Yeah.
So then I have unfettered access to all the cricketing fraternity of India and the world. That would be that's not possible, but that's something which I would have done definitely.
Yeah. This is really like cricket. Sir, one last question of rapid fire. What is your favorite quote?
Sorry, come again.
What is your favorite quote? Quote by somebody you like?
Okay. So I think I already mentioned one. I think the Dhoni
Yeah.
quote is very important for me. The sentence
Hmm.
doesn't get over until the full stop comes in. That's a quote which I always look at. And it always keeps me going on. No match is over. And I somehow believe that you have to pull things as far as possible before going for a harakiri and the last kill and a slog over. But don't try the
Yeah.
slog over now. So that's important quote for me.
Yeah. It's an amazing quote. Yeah, with that, I would like to end this rapid fire session. And one question I have left is that with the diverse experience of 28 years, you studied electronics engineering, you became the
Mm.
CIO of multinational bank. Your journey is really inspiring. So, if now you could go back and give one advice to your 25-year-old self, what advice would that
I think the advice is there's no substitute for hard work. I think you need
be?
to
Hmm.
keep on working hard. I think we touched upon it. I think the luck is there, but I think
Yeah.
hard work is important. I think few areas that one can definitely look at is listen to your instincts. I think it's don't do too much thought around, but your instincts is very important. The other thing is that I think when you are in a career, you should think beyond your job role. If you
Hmm.
are say a programmer or a project manager or whatever you are, people tend to be very focused on their work and do a fantastic job with it. But I think it's important that you look around your environment and see what areas need to be covered on. So, for example, if you come to your office in the morning and you find the office to be a bit messy, then should not leave it to somebody to fix it.
Yeah.
You should take that. Not I'm not
Hmm.
saying you sweep the floor, but you get the right facilities guy to come and fix the office for you.
Hmm.
So that's very important. And I think two other capabilities are communication and collaboration. That's very important. I think you have to keep on communicating, keep on collaborating. And I think, sorry, I know we're out of time, but the last point I would say
Yeah.
is take your work and activity as a challenge. I think don't take it as a
Hmm.
stress. If you start taking that as a pressure, as a stress, then
Yeah.
it'll affect you on your personal health and everything. Take everything that comes your way as a challenge.
Hmm.
Okay, this has come, let's see how I can fix it. That's how you take it. That's the attitude which matters.
Yes, sir, truly. So amazing advice, sir. Since I would like to elaborate more on that, but we are out of time, I think we should move to some audience questions.
Yes, please.
So, first question is by Mohit. What features bank take to reduce NPAs?
Yeah, so Mohit, that's a good question. And NPA has been a key topic amongst banks and not only SCB but all other banks, and it's a few focus area for the regulators. I think one of the things is that recently the RBI has come up with a guideline for a more robust automated NPA tool within the banks to be set up, and I think that's the latest addition which is done. So this tool not only will automatically compute NPAs and will be able to go back and update your core transaction processing systems automatically in case of NPA, some asset becoming an NPA or some account becoming an NPA. So these are some features which are in place. I think it's probably gone live early this month in most banks. And I think it will bring a quite a step difference in the way it's happening so far. So there is no manual intervention. It's a completely system driven solution that is coming into place.
Mhm. Yes, sir. So another question which is asked by Selena is how much security is ensured in digital banking? Is it worth the hype if we lose money sometime during transaction?
No, it's. I think the hype is important. I think it's important because it's a way of transacting money. At the end of the day, it's like losing a check or losing a piece of paper. Only thing here it's an electronic mode, and the stakes involved are very high. Today, I can if done very well, I can actually make the entire payment for my house through online banking, or I
Hmm.
can lose my entire provident fund on lifetime earning from online banking. And hence it's very important that the security required for it to be made as robust as possible is important. I think any piece of security which comes in, security and convenience don't go hand in hand. But I think it's something, it's important to do that. There's no choice. Like, for example, why would you lock a house? It's not convenient to carry a key always. You'll forget, you'll
Hmm.
lose, but still need to lock the house with a key. That's just like that. Security as important as possible for online banking and mobile banking, which is there. And whatever your bank is providing, mind you, please understand, you have to follow it. I have no other words than this. It's there's no second thoughts to it, please.
Yeah, sir. Will digitization and automation reduce employment in financial services?
Sorry, I lost you for a
Oh,
moment. Can you repeat the
okay.
question?
Yes, I will repeat the question. So, will digitization and automation reduce employment in financial services?
I wouldn't think so, and not at that rate as it's expected. Volume of transaction which is there. Earlier, banking was a high ticket item. Today UPI transactions happen for 10 rupees also. You buy some vegetable and you pay 10 rupees by UPI. So that's quite key. And also, like any other system solution, for example, you take an ops job, with 2.8 billion transactions, there'll be still a minuscule percent which will fail. Even if you take a 0.001%, you imagine the number of transactions which are failing actually. And then there's a human needed to reconcile and finding out, oh, you
Hmm.
have given me money, I have not given. So it will keep on growing. So I think the jobs, I don't think will fall. I think the upskillment will happen eventually. People will have to upskill themselves in the way they work and the way they do things today. So that's where it will be.
So, so moving on to the next question is, how are banks and fintech startups partnership redefining the future of banking?
So I think we had that question touched up a bit. I think I
Yeah.
had some points to mention over there, which I have kind of
Hmm.
not did not mention. But I think I'll give you 2 or 3 examples, which will give you a more, maybe a 2-minute brief on it. So one is, you take a payment switch provider provided by a
Hmm.
fintech. What is a payment switch? A payment switch might be an ATM switch or might be an UPI switch.
Yeah.
Again, I'm sorry, I'm hyping a bit on UPI, but with the
Hmm.
large kind of volumes, it is impossible for a bank to sustain a switch internally. The scale up is so high. If I have a system to be maintained in my own organization which scales up at 100 times in a year, then I need infinite funds for it to happening, which my management won't give me. But if it goes to a fintech, the fintech has got an ability to invest, and has an ability to pre-plan and build it up. So they are niche in it, so they can do that better. That's an example which is there. Second is, so the scalability, availability feature which fintechs give you. Second is the capability it gives you. For example, you take, there are companies, fintechs, which give you credit modeling. So if suppose I need a credit card, so I will give some set of information. If the banks were to do, I will have to do a lot of paperwork and identifying whether I am a credit worthy guy to get a credit card. But if I give it to a fintech model, they've got AI ML systems running which can compute and give you exact predicament, which is like very, very accurate on whether the person can get a credit card or. So I think these are partnerships which are very important, which will definitely help
Hmm.
the industry and the banks and the fintechs to grow.
So another question is asked by Janvi is, till date, a lot of processes and form require people to visit banks and stand in long queues. Is there a way to digitalize that?
So I think a lot of them have already been digitalized. So I think so for example, account opening. I think before COVID struck us in March last year, account opening was a visit the bank exercise. You still needed to give a wet signature, to
Hmm.
open a account. With video KYC permissions coming in, you can now open an account just sitting anywhere. So that's something which is kind of very, very different, which has happened. I already mentioned an online remittance example where you can do a remittance without actually going to the branch at all.
Yeah.
And a lot of things, and COVID is a great learner. From COVID, a
Hmm.
lot of processes have been kind of digitized, automated, and they will probably happen for good going forward. Like work from home.
Yeah.
Eventually, you now have proven to the world that in another, so you don't need to go to office. You are as
Hmm.
productive as you could be. So, so these are a lot of processes which already have been digitized, automated, and I think there's an opportunity still to do that. I think it, as long as we're able to demonstrate as a banking industry robustness and security around that, we can do that. Uh, the one thing I hate personally, and this is I
Uh,
don't like visiting a branch. If I have to visit a
yeah.
branch, I'll be the most unhappy person that day. I so I always look and always challenge my colleagues in the bank. Why do you want me to go and sign this? And you
Hmm.
already have this available with you in some form. So you have this
Hmm.
typical times when, okay, to do this, give me a copy of your Aadhaar, give me a copy of
Hmm.
your PAN, give me a copy
Yeah.
of this self copy. All these are really boring and crazy stuff
Yeah.
for me to do again and again.
Yeah. Yes, sir. So nowadays, a lot of tech companies are launching their own solution. Some time ago, Apple launched their own credit cards. So how are banks planning to compete against tech companies like that?
So I think the Apple has launched a card, but in India already we've got the Samsung Pay feature available,
Yeah.
and that is something which I am a very proud user. So I've got this Samsung phone with me, which I use, and some models of Samsung phone do support, but I think it's people don't know that these capabilities are available. So I'll give you an example of my lifestyle. I do. I'm not a big time exerciser, but I do go for my walks sometime in the evening or morning. And as you go down, you have some laundry shopping list to pick up. So if I
Yeah.
had to pick up, I will go down. Oh, I had to buy. There's no money in my pocket because I'm walking, but I always have my phone with me. Now with my phone, I've got UPI payment available. I got my Samsung Pay where my card is tokenized and stored, so I can actually tap either by my credit card or my bank account to
Hmm.
buy anything. So there are capabilities already available today in the country which we are not using fully. That's one.
Hmm.
But I think my guess is that as we mentioned, the ecosystem of the banks and fintech companies will work together. So the core payment skills, all which is for core banking skills of money storage and money movement, will stay with the banks, and everything else around it in a concentric
Yeah.
circle will be run by the fintechs.
Hmm.
So, the core banking portion will stay with the banks, which will be
Hmm.
very, very strongly regulated and governed.
Hmm.
And not that the other guys know it, not will not, but it will give the more flexibility and capability across. And that's how things are moving into. So you got the Apple Pay, you got the Samsung Pays, you got Google Pays, and all of these of the world are coming into it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there are a few questions remaining. After that, we can wrap up the session. Maybe one last question for now. So Sarthak has asked how hard it is for banks to keep up with the changing technological advancements.
It is hard. It's not easy. I think, as I mentioned, banks have got
Yeah.
legacy platforms with them, and
Hmm.
we are banks. So at the end of the day, there is limited money available to
Hmm.
invest, fund things which are there. But I think I would say two or three areas which have been very important, which are of strategic importance, not only to banks, but any organization in any industry. I think one is cloud. So I think the cloud gives you the situation of scalability and availability.
Hmm.
Operationally, it gives you that situation where you can grow and keep your business and performance robust. That's one thing. Second is API. API is a part breaking concept which is there. Standard Chartered already has got about 150 plus APIs published on their store, access.sc.com, which is there. API is very, very important because it allows you to connect to fintech partners, clients, anybody you need to. So that gives you that ability to scale up. And as long as it's an organization, and third is data. I think if you have got a data lake, you got analytical capability, then that kind of like a magnet brings more business to you.
Hmm.
So if you are building your strategy around these three pillars today, then it will definitely help your business cope up with the technology changes which happen in the industry,
Hmm.
and you don't have to worry about coping up, because once you're on cloud, the cloud takes care of your growth, obsolescence, scalability, elasticity, everything cloud gives you. API gives you a tool to talk to a front end, which can be anything. It can be anything, and that gives you. And then there's data.
So That was a great session, sir. So with that question, I think we can call a wrap onto this session. Thank you, sir. That was an enlightening afternoon with you, and I'm confident that everyone who has attended has gained some knowledge from your experience. And I would like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude on behalf of the Team Nexus. Thank you, sir, for sharing this knowledge, and we can conclude this session. Have a great day.
Thanks, Kunal.
Yeah,
Thanks to everybody for patiently
yeah,
listening. Of course, I would have been loved to see your faces, and meet you
yeah.
in person, but hopefully maybe there's a next time. And thanks,
Hmm.
Janvi and Akash and my team for really helping me out with this. So really appreciate, guys, and all the best to all of you all. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much,
much.
sir.